The sky burned red over what was left of New York. Captain Ryan Blake crouched in the ruins of an orbital defense bunker, his fingers tracing the rusted serial number on his rifle. The weapon was older than he was, a relic from Earth's last war before the planet unified. Now it might be the only thing standing between him and the nightmare descending from orbit. Outside the reinforced glass, the Vorac harvest shipbone, Taker blotted out the sun. Its jagged hull bristled with spines and organic-looking growths, the underside lined with rows of repurposed cattle pens. Blake's stomach twisted as he watched human figures, men, women, even children, being herded into glowing pods by armored Vorac overseers. The aliens moved with terrifying efficiency, their chitinous limbs clicking as they worked. "Status report," Blake whispered into his cracked comm unit. Static hissed back at him. A shadow fell across the bunker entrance. Krelix, the Vorac overseer assigned to this sector, ducked through the doorway, his segmented armor scraping against the frame. 4 glowing eyes fixed on Blake, still hiding soft meat. The alien's voice was a wet gurgle, translated through the vocalizer grafted to his throat. Blake didn't answer. He'd learned in the first hours of the invasion that Vorac respected only strength. Any sign of fear was an invitation for torment. Krelix's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. He reached down with a clawed hand and hauled Blake to his feet. "Come, the High Chancellor wishes to address your kind." They emerged into the ruined streets. The air stank of burning metal and something worse, a sickly, sweet odor Blake recognized from the processing centers. Around them, human prisoners shuffled in chains, their faces blank with shock. Vorac shock troopers patrolled the perimeter, their plasma rifles humming. A massive hologram flickered to life above the ruins. Vorac High Chancellor Droth's grotesque face filled the sky, his segmented jaw working as he spoke. "People of Earth," the translation boomed across every surviving screen and speaker, "your resistance has been amusing, but ultimately pointless." Blake's hands clenched into fists. He remembered the first transmission, broadcast on every frequency when the Vorac fleet arrived. "You are weak. You are food. Resistance is illogical," Droth continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "Your planet has been designated Harvest World Prime. Your species will serve the Vorac Dominion as livestock." The hologram shifted to show rows of humans suspended in nutrient tanks, their bodies being processed into the gelatinous slurry Vorac preferred. "This is the natural order." Next to Blake, a woman in tattered business attire began to sob. Krelix backhanded her without looking, his armored limb cracking her ribs. She collapsed, gasping. "Problem? Soft meat?" Krelix asked Blake, his breath reeking of rotting meat. Blake stared at the harvest ship looming overhead. Somewhere in its belly, thousands of humans were being prepped for processing. He thought of the last transmission from Earth Command before comms went dark. 3 words repeated on every channel: "Hold the line." He looked down at his rusted rifle. The power indicator flickered weakly. 1 shot left. Maybe 2. Krelix followed his gaze and laughed, a sound like grinding bones. "You think that toy can hurt us?" The Vorac tapped his armored chest. "Our hide turns your best bullets. Your warships burn in our atmosphere. You are nothing." Blake exhaled slowly. He'd seen the Vorac armor in action, watched as entire platoons emptied their magazines into a single shock trooper to no effect. But he'd also noticed something else during the invasion. The Vorac moved in patterns, predictable ones. They didn't adapt. They didn't improvise. And they'd never considered that humans might have secrets buried deeper than their orbital defenses. The ground trembled far below the ruined city. In bunkers even the Vorac hadn't found yet. Ancient generators hummed to life. Krelix's head snapped up. What was Blake allowed himself a grim smile. "You're right," he said, tightening his grip on the rifle. "We are nothing." He raised the weapon, aiming not at Krelix, but at the exposed power conduit above the Vorac's head. "But we're really good at pretending to be." The rifle fired, the conduit exploded, and as the Vorac overseer staggered back, blinded by sparks, Blake whispered the words every human soldier had been waiting to say since the first harvest ship appeared. Titanfall is coming. The lab hummed with the quiet desperation of a dying world. Dr. Lisa Hayes wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers trembling as they danced across the cracked console. The air smelled of burnt circuitry and fear. Outside the reinforced windows, the sky burned orange with Vorac harvest, ships descending like carrion birds. Vexis stood in the corner. Her forearms crossed in what Lisa had learned was the Zephyrian gesture of hopelessness. The alien scholar's silver skin reflected the emergency lights, making her look like a ghost already. "Your decryption attempts are futile," Vexis said, her voice a melodic whisper. "The Vorac communications network is impenetrable. Even my people could not break it." Lisa didn't look up. "Then why are you still here?" A pause. Then Vexis made a sound like wind chimes. Zephyrian laughter. "Curiosity. I wish to see how a doomed species spends its final hours." The console beeped. Lisa's breath caught. A string of code flickered across the screen. Human military encryption, buried beneath layers of Vorac data streams. Her fingers flew. "We're not dead yet." Vexis drifted closer, her elongated fingers tracing the screen. "What is this?" "Old Earth defense protocols, buried deep." Lisa's throat tightened as the decryption bar crawled forward. Fei. The building shook as another Vorac transport landed nearby somewhere. Alarms wailed. A new window exploded across the display. Lisa's heart stopped. "Project Titanfall. Status active." Vexis inhaled sharply. "This is not possible. Your species had no spacefaring military capability. The galactic census confirmed it." Lisa's laugh was raw. "You think we'd put our real defenses in the census?" She tapped into the command line, her pulse hammering. The screen resolved into a live feed, a lunar topographic scan. Vexis made a choking noise. "Those are shipyards." Lisa zoomed in. The moon's surface rippled like water under the scan. Craters yawned open, revealing cavernous construction bays. Hundreds, no, thousands of angular black warships nestled in the shadows, their hulls marked with the old United Earth Space Navy insignia. A new alert flashed. Fleet activation sequence initiated. Vexis staggered back. "How long have these been here?" "Since the first Cold War." Lisa's voice shook. Every government lied. Every budget oversight. Every failed space program. All funneled into this. We just never turned them on. Outside, the ground trembled. Not from Vorac ships this time. From something deeper. Something waking. Vexis's voice was barely audible. "You hid an armada in your moon." Lisa's smile was all teeth, and the Vorac just parked their fleet right above it. The console beeped again. A new message scrolled across the screen in jagged red text. "All hands to stations. Final reckoning is now." Vexis looked at Lisa with something entirely new in her eyes. Not pity, not amusement. Lisa grabbed the emergency transmitter, her voice steady for the first time in days. "This is Dr. Hayes at Lunar Command. Titanfall is go." "Repeat. Titanfall is..." The building shook again. The lights died. In the darkness, Vexis whispered a single Zephyrian word, one Lisa didn't need translated. "Dread." Then the backup generators roared to life, and the screens lit up with a single image. The moon's surface splitting apart like an eggshell, and the first human dreadnought rising from its tomb. The banquet hall reeked of charred meat and something sour. Something human. Jake Morrison blinked against the pulsing red light overhead, his wrists raw from the energy cuffs binding him to the post. Around him, Vorac elites lounged on bone, carved benches, their segmented limbs clicking as they feasted. The table before them groaned under platters of steaming nutrient paste, each bowl labeled with a barcode matching the humans processed into it. Jake's stomach twisted. He recognized the numbers. "Ah, prisoner Fei," rumbled High Chancellor Droth. his mandibles dripping with grey slurry. The Vorac leader leaned in, his faceted eyes reflecting Jake's gaunt face. You resist consumption, curious. A server drone scraped paste from a bowl-marked CT Fay. Morrison, L. Jake, lunged against his restraints, teeth bared. You sick bastards, Droth chuckled, the sound like grinding stones. Your emotional outbursts are inefficient. Your species lacks the biological fortitude to survive as anything but sustenance. He lifted a goblet filled with dark fluid. Yet your fear glands, exquisitely potent. Jake spat. The glob landed between Droth's ocular clusters. The hall fell silent. Droth's claws flexed. You will learn respect, softkin. He gestured to a guard. Prepare him for... Alarms shrieked. The Vorac froze as crimson light strobed across the chamber. Droth's comm bead crackled. High Chancellor, unknown signatures emerging from lunar. Jake laughed. It started as a wheeze, then built into something wild. The guard tightening his cuffs hesitated. You hear that? Jake rasped. That's the sound of your extinction. Droth backhanded him. Jake's head snapped sideways, blood filling his mouth. The Vorac leader snarled into his comm. Report, ships. Hundreds of... The transmission dissolved into static. Jake grinned through split lips. We've been farming something, too. He nodded at the nearest view screen as it flickered to life, showing the lunar surface. Cracks spiderwebbed across the moon's crust. Then, steel behemoths erupted from the fractures. Droth's mandibles slackened. Impossible. The screen zoomed in on the lead vessel's hull markings. USN Defiance, Jake exhaled. Told you we weren't just food. A junior Vorac aide stumbled in, his carapace rattling. High Chancellor, the human fleet. They're firing on the bone, taker. Droth whirled on Jake. You hid this. How? Jake leaned back against his post, savoring the panic in the alien's eyes. You ever hear of the Cold War? We've been prepping for worse than you since before we left our atmosphere. The view screen lit up with railgun fire. The bone taker's silhouette fractured like glass. Droth hissed orders. Recall all harvesters. Mobilize the defensive. Jake interrupted. Too late. He nodded at the screen again. The Defiance's main battery glowed white hot. That's for my brother. The blast vaporized 3 Vorac cruisers in a single flash. Chaos erupted. Vorac nobles scrambled for the exits, their feast forgotten. Droth remained, his claws trembling. You baited us. Jake yanked against his cuffs. The left one sparked, then failed. Nah, he stood, rubbing his freed wrist. We just let you think you were the apex predators. The Devourer's maw shuddered as something massive impacted its hull. Klaxons wailed. Jake snatched a fallen Vorac sidearm from a fleeing guard and leveled it at Droth's thorax. Funny thing about humans, Jake said, finger tightening on the trigger. We taste terrible when we fight back. The shot echoed through the crumbling ship. Outside, the stars burned with human vengeance. The moon trembled. Admiral Vance Carter stood in the buried command center, his boots planted firmly on the steel, grating as the facility shook around him. The walls of Lunar Vault. Faye groaned, ancient hydraulics protesting as the final activation sequence engaged. His reflection flickered in the darkened observation glass. A grizzled man with a scar running from temple to jaw. The kind of face that had seen too much war and not enough sleep. Status, he growled. The air shimmered as the holographic eye, known as Warlock, materialized beside him. Its form was a shifting mass of tactical data and crimson light, a specter of war given voice. All systems nominal, final authorization required. Carter didn't hesitate. He pressed his palm against the biometric scanner. The machine hissed, needles pricking his skin to verify his DNA. A green light flashed. Authorization, Carter, Vance, Alpha, Omega. The AI's voice deepened, resonating through the vault like the first thunderclap of a storm. Protocol confirmed, activating final reckoning. Deep below the lunar surface, buried beneath centuries of dust and deception, the vault doors began to split apart. On the surface, the moon's grey plains shuddered, cracks spiderwebbed across the regolith, widening into gaping fissures. The Vorac sensor ships orbiting Earth registered the seismic activity immediately. "Report," Fleetmaster Zorath barked from the bridge of the bone. Taker, a junior Vorac technician, stammered, his chitinous fingers scrambling over the console. "Lunar instability. Fleetmaster, possible tectonic." Then the moon exploded, not in fire, not in debris, but in light. 1,000 brilliant flares as the hidden shipyards of Project Titanfall roared to life. From the fractures in the lunar crust, black steel behemoths erupted, their hulls sleek and angular, their engines burning crimson like the eyes of awakened giants. The USN Defiance led the charge, its kilometer-long frame bristling with railgun turrets and missile pods. Behind it, hundreds more followed, cruisers, destroyers, carriers, all painted in the void, black livery of Earth's secret armada. Inside the Defiance's war room, Carter watched the tactical displays light up with Vorac signatures. Each red blip represented a harvest, ship, a slaver, a butcher, Admiral, Warlock intoned. Primary targets locked, awaiting orders. Carter exhaled. For 20 years, he had overseen Titanfall in silence. 20 years of watching Earth kneel, pretending weakness, while the real warriors trained in the dark. "No more. All ships," he said, his voice carrying across the fleet. "Wide comm, open fire." The first railgun salvo tore through the bone. Taker like a spear through rotten fruit. The Vorac ship's shields collapsed instantly, its hull buckling as hypersonic rounds punched clean through its reactors. Secondary explosions rippled down its spine, gutting the vessel from within. On the bridge, Zorath stumbled as the deck lurched beneath him. Alarms wailed. The stench of burning chitin filled the air. "Return fire!" he screeched. His weapons officer hesitated. "Fleetmaster, their signatures, their power readings." Zorath backhanded him. "What?" The officer trembled. "They outgun us, 10-1. Across the battlefield, human warships moved with terrifying precision. The Defiance's point, defense lasers swatted down Vorac torpedoes like flies. A squadron of human fighters, sleek and dagger, shaped, carved through enemy formations, their plasma cannons reducing harvest, ships to molten slag. On the USN Atlantica, Captain Blake watched the carnage unfold on his view screen, his hands clenched into fists. "Sir," his tactical officer said, voice tight with awe, "we're winning." Blake didn't smile. "Not yet." "Win," he muttered. "This isn't a victory, it's a reckoning." Back in the Lunar Command Center, Warlock's hologram flickered as it processed the battle data. Vorac fleet cohesion collapsing. Enemy casualties at Fey orders. Carter studied the holographic battlefield. The Vorac were broken, their ships scattering like roaches under light, but he knew this was just the beginning. "Recall all fighters," he ordered. "Form up on the Defiance. We're not done yet." Warlock tilted its head. Query, next objective. Carter's lips curled into a cold, satisfied smirk. "Next," he said, "we take the fight to their homeworld." The AI's eyes burned brighter, calculating jump coordinates. "Prepare for FTL." The hidden armada of Earth turned as one, their engines flaring like newborn stars. The Vorac had come for livestock. They would leave with wolves. The Atlantica's bridge hummed with restrained energy. Captain Blake gripped the command rail, his knuckles white. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the Vorac bone, Taker drifting lazily in high orbit. Its jagged hull bristled with weapons, but the ship moved like a predator too sure of its prey. "Status report," Blake barked. "Railguns charged, sir." Lieutenant Chen answered. Her fingers danced over the tactical console. "Shields at full. The Bone Taker hasn't even powered weapons." Blake's lips curled. The Vorac hadn't bothered to raise defenses. To them, Earth ships were relics, pathetic attempts at warfare. They didn't know about the lunar shipyards. They didn't know about Titanfall. "Open a channel," Blake ordered. The comms officer hesitated. "Sir, they're ignoring our hails." "Then let's make them listen." Blake turned to the weapons station. "Target their primary reactor, single shot." The Atlantica's railgun whined as it charged. A deep thrum pulsed through the deck. Blake watched the targeting reticule settle over the bone. Taker's midsection. Fire. The railgun discharged with a sound like thunder. A tungsten slug streaked across the void, invisible until impact. The bone taker's hull crumpled like paper. Atmosphere vented in a geyser of frozen vapor. Secondary explosions rippled down its spine. On the bridge, the crew erupted into cheers. Blake didn't join them. His eyes stayed locked on the view screen as the Vorac ship listed, its systems failing. "Sir," Chen said, her voice tight. "We're being hailed." Blake nodded. "Put them through." The screen flickered. Fleetmaster Zorath's scarred face appeared. His chitinous plates flared in rage. "What trickery is this?" he snarled. "Your kind had no fleet." Blake leaned forward. "We just hid it better than you." Zorath's mandibles twitched. Behind him, Vorac crew scrambled as alarms blared. "You dare strike a harvest ship? The Vorac Dominion will—" "Save it," Blake interrupted. He tapped a command into his console. "You came to Earth thinking we were livestock. Now, you'll learn what happens when the cattle fight back." The screen split. A dozen more human warships blinked into existence around the Atlantica, their railguns humming with lethal intent. Zorath's eyes widened. "Impossible." "Target all Vorac vessels," Blake ordered. "Full barrage." The Atlantica's guns spoke again. This time the entire fleet joined in. Railgun slugs tore through Vorac hulls. Plasma cannons seared across their shields. The Bone Taker shattered under the onslaught, its wreckage scattering across orbit. Zorath's transmission cut off mid-snarl. "Status," Blake demanded. "Vorac fleet is in full retreat," Chen reported. "Their remaining ships are jumping to FTL." Blake exhaled. The first blow had been struck, but he knew this wasn't over. The Vorac would return, and next time, they wouldn't underestimate humanity. "Set course for the Defiance," he ordered. "We're not done yet." The Atlantica's engines flared as it turned toward the heart of the battle. Behind it, the shattered remains of the Bone Taker burned silently against the black. On the bridge, no one spoke. They didn't need to. Every human there knew the truth now. The galaxy would never see them as prey again. The observation deck of the Celestial Witness hummed with nervous energy. Ambassador Elias Cole stood perfectly still as the holographic displays flickered to life around him, projecting the battle raging near Earth's orbit. The Zephyrian High Council floated in their anti-gravity thrones, their forearms twitching with barely contained shock vexes. The scholar who had once declared humanity doomed now clutched her data tablet so tightly her claws left marks in the metal. This is impossible," she whispered on the screens. Human dreadnoughts carved through Vorac formations like knives through flesh. Railgun rounds punched through hulls. Plasma lances sliced harvest ships in half. The Defiance, Admiral Carter's flagship, unleashed a barrage that turned 3 Vorac cruisers into expanding clouds of debris. High Chancellor Zelrock, eldest of the Zephyrian Council, extended a trembling limb toward the display. "These are the same beings you classified as livestock." His voice carried the weight of centuries. The same species the Vorac were consuming like cattle. Vexis didn't answer. She couldn't. Elias Cole allowed himself a small smile. He tapped his wristcom, and the holograms shifted to show Earth's surface. Cities still standing, defenses intact, populations watching the skies with newfound hope. "You made the same mistake the Vorac did," he said quietly. "You saw what we wanted you to see." A younger council member, Tervix, hissed through his nasal slits. "Deception. You hid your strength." Cole shrugged. "We learned from history. The weak don't survive first contact, so we made sure no one ever thought we were weak." The screens flared as the Atlantica, Captain Blake's ship, executed a precision strike on the Vorac command vessel. The Devourer's maw erupted in a fireball that momentarily washed out the holograms with white light. When the display cleared, only twisted metal remained. Zelrok's central eye dilated. Your species was never in danger, was it? Cole's smile faded. Oh, we were, just not from the Vorac. He gestured to the stars beyond the view screen. From whatever's out there that made the Vorac think they could harvest entire worlds. That is why we hid. That is why we waited. A new transmission crackled through the Celestial Witness's comm system, Admiral Carter's voice, calm and deadly. Vorac fleet neutralized, proceeding to Phase 2. Vexis finally found her voice. Phase 2? Cole didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the stars. The Vorac came to our world to feast. Now we return the favor. The council chambers fell silent as the implications settled over them. On the screens, human ships began aligning for FTL jumps, not toward Earth, but outward. Toward Vorac space, Tevik stood abruptly, his exoskeleton flushing pale. You mean to exterminate them? Cole turned slowly. His eyes were cold. We mean to make sure no one ever looks at humanity and thinks, pray again. Zelrok exhaled through his spiracles, a sound like wind through dead trees. The Galactic Federation will need to revise its records. Vexis stared at the screens, at the human armada moving with terrifying purpose. What do we classify them as now? Cole's answer came without hesitation. The same thing we've always been, survivors. Outside, the last of the Vorac ships broke apart under concentrated fire. The Defiance's main cannon flared once more, a final punctuation mark to the battle. In the silence that followed, the Zeperian High Council exchanged glances. Protocols would need rewriting. Treaties would need adjusting. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and the species they'd dismissed as fragile had done it with a single brutal lesson. Vexis finally spoke the words they were all thinking. They played dead until the hunters became the hunted. Cole nodded. And now the galaxy learns the truth. He activated his comlink. Admiral, the Zeperians are watching. Show them what happens to those who mistake mercy for weakness. Somewhere in the void, human warships jumped to light speed. The message was clear. This was humanity's galaxy now. The bridge of the Defiance hummed with restrained energy. Admiral Vance Carter stood before the panoramic viewport. Watching the last of the Vorac harvest, ships limped toward their jump points. Their once proud fleet now resembled a broken swarm, hulls scorched and leaking atmosphere. Behind him, the tactical display flickered with the positions of Earth's armada. Hundreds of warships, their blackened steel gleaming under the sun's light. Admiral, Lieutenant Cho said, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline still coursing through the crew. Final casualty reports are in. We lost 12 ships. The Vorac lost 87. Carter didn't smile. He didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. On the lower decks, the freed prisoners of the Devourers, more crowded around holoscreens, their faces gaunt but alight with something they hadn't felt in months' hope. Jake Morrison, still wearing the tattered remains of his jumpsuit, pressed a hand against the cold metal bulkhead, as if reassuring himself this wasn't another Vorac hallucination. They lied to us, whispered a woman beside him, her voice raw. They told us Earth had no defenses. Jake's lips curled. No, they just didn't know where to look. Above them, the Defiance's main comm array activated, broadcasting on every human and alien frequency. Carter's voice, gravelly with exhaustion but unshakable, echoed across the stars. Vorac High Command, he said. This is Admiral Vance Carter of the United Earth Space Navy. You came to our world believing we were weak. You thought we were prey. A pause. The galaxy held its breath. You were wrong. On the Zeperian observation ship, Celestial Witness, Vexis watched the feed with her 4 hands clasped tight. The council chambers around her were silent. The the usual hum of debate replaced by stunned stillness. Ambassador Elias Cole stood at the center, his posture relaxed, as if he hadn't just rewritten the fate of his species in the eyes of the Federation. "This changes everything," murmured one of the elder counselors, his frills quivering. Cole smiled. "No, it just corrects a misunderstanding." Back aboard the Defiance, Carter turned to his officers, set course for the Vorac homeworlds. Maximum burn, Lieutenant Cho hesitated. "Sir, we're really going to their systems." Carter's eyes were flint. "They made this personal. We finish it." The order rippled through the fleet. Engines flared, their crimson glow painting the void as the human armada prepared for the first offensive jump in their history. In the mess hall, Jake Morrison lifted a cup of reclaimed water, the closest thing they had to a victory toast. Around him, former prisoners mirrored the gesture. "To Earth," someone said. Jake shook his head to payback. The ships vanished into FTL, leaving behind the wreckage of Vorac arrogance. And the galaxy learned a new truth. Humanity didn't just survive, it conquered.